Okay. Okay, so start with party and class. So at the beginning of the 20th century, there was some disagreement among socialists about the role of the Revolutionary Party. In particular, Lenin wanted a vanguard party, but there was concern from some folks, Luxembourg in particular, about an elite party that was not made up by the masses. So the social democratic view is that the party should be formed in preparation to constitute the ruling body of the state. And the growth of the party is essential so as to ensure that when the transition to socialism inevitably came, whether through elections or defensive violence by the working class, the party capable of taking over and forming the basis of the new state would exist. So the party represents the class in this formulation. Basically, the party is the working class is the party. Outside of the party, the worker has no independent consciousness, and so revolution can't succeed without a mass movement of workers joining the Revolutionary Party. So this comes from the correct observation that we need mass mobilization because we can't all sit around and wait for revolution to spontaneously occur. Looking at you, some anarchists, but it does view spontaneous worker action as harmful if revolution comes before the party apparatus is in place, and it does not look for ways to harness energy of spontaneous action. Kotsky in particular had a fear of what workers would do without the party and the associated dangers of a premature revolution. So, in the social democratic view, the working class comes into power when the party comes into power. And since the party must represent the working class as a whole, this necessarily leads to a watering down of the politics. So this quote here from Trotsky in 1904 was a criticism of Lenin's vanguard party, saying the organization of the party substitutes itself for the party as a whole, then the Central Committee substitutes itself for the organization, and finally the dictator substitutes himself for the Central Committee. By the 1917 revolutions, Trotsky had come over to the side of Lenin, obviously, and it turns out that this criticism applied more to the Social Democratic Party because of the fact that the massive apparatus needed to hold together a mass of half-politicized members in a series of social activities led to a toning down of political debate, a lack of political seriousness, which in turn reduced the ability of members to make independent political evaluations and increase the need for apparatus-induced involvement. So without a central organization aimed at giving clarity and decisiveness to political differences, the independence of the rank and file members was bound to be permanently undermined. Ties of personal affection or of deference to established leaders became more important than scientific political evaluation. So the alternative revolutionary party, according to Lenin and Gramsci. So Lenin first does acknowledge that there can be sudden transformations of working class consciousness. There are decades where we fuck around and weeks where we find out, basically Lenin. And he said, we must remember what a tremendous educational and organizational power the revolution has when mighty historical events force the man in the street out of his remote garret or basement corner and make a citizen of him. Months of revolution sometimes educate citizens more quickly and fully than decades of political stagnation. So Lenin wasn't saying that the working class can't educate themselves or that consciousness can't spontaneously evolve. But the problem is that there is not a uniformity in class consciousness. So this is a popular quote: without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary practice. And so in order to deal with that lack of uniformity in class consciousness, a vanguard party is needed. So the party is separate from the mass organization of workers and requires more dedication and more developed class consciousness than is found in the majority of workers. To forget the distinction between the vanguard and the whole of the masses gravitating towards it, to forget the vanguard's constant duty of raising ever wider sections to its own advanced level, means simply to deceive oneself, to shut one's eyes to the immensity of our tasks, and to narrow down these tasks. So basically, to be a party of the masses, not only in name, we must get ever wider masses to share in all party affairs, steadily elevate them from political indifference to protest and struggle, from a general spirit of protest to an adoption of social democratic views, from adoption of these views to support of the movement, and from support to organized membership of the party. So several quotes from Lenin there. So basically, the vanguard party is where the most militant and most conscious engage in debate to hone theories and prepare for cohesive action. Otherwise, we end up in what he called the marsh, where well-developed ideas are mixed with less developed ideas, such that there's no clear way forward and no obvious course of action. So while spreading consciousness, the role of the party is also to be creating conditions for revolution. In particular, creation of a network of agents that would not have to sit around waiting for the call to insurrection, but would carry out such regular activity that would guarantee the highest probability of success in the event of an insurrection. Such activity would strengthen our connections with the broadest masses of the workers and with all strata that are discontented with the aristocracy. Precisely such activity would serve to cultivate the ability to estimate correctly the general political situation and consequently the ability to select the proper moment for the uprising. Precisely such activity would train all local organizations to respond simultaneously to the same political questions, incidents, and events that agitate the whole of Russia and to react to these incidents in the most rigorous, uniform, and expedient manner possible. So basically, the class as a whole is engaged in unconscious opposition to capitalism. The party is the section that is already conscious and unites to try to give conscious direction to the struggle of the rest. So spontaneous actions of the workers is not necessarily a bad thing, but can help kind of serve as a litmus test to so that we know when is the right time to actually engage in revolutionary activity. Okay, so major difference is also what happens when the revolution succeeds. So according to social democrats and Stalinists, the party becomes the ruling body of the state. Obviously, worked out super well in practice. So yeah, great job, everyone. But in Lenin's formulation, the Workers' Council takes over. The Workers' Council is not the party. It's democratic and consists of multiple parties, including the Revolutionary Party. The function of the party is not to be the state, but rather to carry out continual agitation and propaganda among more backwards elements of the class so as to raise their self-consciousness and self-reliance to the pitch that they will both set up workers' councils and fight to overthrow the forms of organization of the bourgeois state. Existing under capitalism, the revolutionary organization will, of necessity, have a quite different structure to that of the workers' state that will arise in the process of overthrowing capitalism. The Revolutionary Party will have to struggle within the institution of the workers' state for its principles as against those with opposed ones. This is only possible because it itself is not the workers' state. So, how does this apply to today? Soviet Russia's gone, all these people are dead. So turns out Lenin was right, can predict the future, he knew what was up. Because trying to involve everyone in a mass movement before spreading class consciousness has diluted the politics and led to reformism that further entrenches capitalism. Basically, today's social democrats want a mass party that includes everyone and have chosen to utilize the Democratic Party apparatus to achieve this goal. But using the Democratic Party to achieve socialist goals inevitably ends with deference to capitalist leaders and of the capitalist leaders of the Democratic Party. This has led to reformism and accomplished basically nothing. Not to say that there's no need for a united front on some important issues. We are in immediate need of united fronts to defend immigrants, safeguard abortion, reproductive rights, stand up to racist police violence, protect public education, fight for unions, and fight against climate change. But there is still need to build an organization of revolutionary Marxists that will subject their situation and that of the class as a whole to scientific scrutiny, will ruthlessly criticize their own mistakes, and will, while engaging in the everyday struggles of the mass of workers, attempt to increase their independent self-activity by unremittingly opposing their ideological and practical subservience to the old society. And that's it. That's the end. Oh, I forgot to announce my penultimate slide.